Maggie Harper.
Here.
All set? Okay, we have, yeah, I think right now we have,
Missing at least one full.
Dan Kelly is not present
yeah,
tonight?
Dan's not here today, so Maggie, you'll be participating in voting.
Okay.
So we have in front of us a couple sets of minutes. I think there was a set of minutes from the 7th in our packet, right?
Correct.
As well as the minutes from the June 21st. That'd be the 7th of June. Anybody had a chance to take a look at them? I think the 7th are amended from our earlier stuff. Mr. Rapucci?
Yeah, I looked at them. I make a motion that we approve both sets of minutes as presented.
All right, so we have a motion from Mr. Rapucci for,
Keep them separate.
Okay.
yeah, let's
Just
do
because I
this.
abstained from the one, so.
Okay, we'll start with
Yes,
the 7th.
so-
We have that motion?
Yes,
Okay.
motion for the, which one?
The 7th of June.
7th of June minutes be accepted as presented.
Okay, a motion, a second. Second, Mr. Peterson, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions? One, Mr. Varley.
And then I make a motion for, that we accept as presented the minutes from June 21st meeting.
Okay, so we have that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Varley. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Any abstentions to that one? Ms. Harper? That motion passes. Okay, communications.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. If you turn to your packet, I'll briefly go through those items that you received after the packets were mailed out. You have a communication on case number 3 from this Deputy City Engineer. This is on 50 Raymond Street. I guess there was some issues with the grading plan not being accurate or correct. The board will want to discuss that before you take it under jurisdiction or consider it. You also have a communication on case number 4, which pertains to Revere University. It's from the Fire Marshal's office.
Okay.
And lastly, case number 5, you have a revised plan set for BAE systems.
Okay.
And that's all I have. I should remind the board that there is a sidewalk training workshop next week. And if you let us know who's going to be there, if you can.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, I'll bring that up during discussion. Okay, report of chairman, committee, and liaison. Ed, anything?
HDC had no. Katie.
All right. Now going to go ahead and read the procedure of the meeting. So the procedure in the meeting and hearings are as follows. After the legal notice of each conditional special use permit, site plan, or subdivision is read by myself, the board will determine if the application is complete and ready to take jurisdiction. The public hearing will begin, at which time the applicant or representative will be given time to present an overview and description of their project. They'll speak to whether or not they agree with the recommended staff stipulations, and the board will have an opportunity to ask relevant follow-up questions of the applicant or staff. Next, I'll then ask for testimony from the audience. I'm gonna first start with those wishing to speak in opposition or concern to the plan. I'll ask that you come forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and this will be the time for you to express your concerns or ask any questions you might have regarding the plan. Next, I'll go and ask for testimony from anyone wishing to speak in favor of the plan. The board will also then ask any relevant follow-up questions of the applicant. The applicant will then be given a rebuttal period at which time that they can come back up and respond to any of the concerns raised by the public testimony. If there remains still any concerns, what I'm gonna ask for is that those in the public get together and they elect one representative to come forward and speak for all of you. You'll be given time to respond to those items that were brought forth during the applicant's rebuttal period. After this has been completed, I'll close the public hearing, and the board will resume a public meeting, at which time we'll deliberate and vote on the application that's in front of us. I'd ask that both sides keep your remarks to the subject at hand, not repeat what has already been said. I want to be fair to everyone and make the best possible decision based on testimony presented and considering all of our applicable approval criteria established in the Nashua Revised Ordinances for both the conditional special use permits, site plans, and also subdivision plans. I'm going to thank everybody right now for your interest and courteous attention. Ask that if you do have a cell phone at this time that you put it on vibrate or turn it off. Thanks again. Okay, moving into the agenda. So, old business conditional special use permits, there are none. Old business subdivision plans, there are none. Old business site plans, case number 1, Diane Gimber, Bishop Real Estate Management, Inc. That particular item has been tabled to a date uncertain. We'll notify abutters when that's going to come forward. So case number 2, or excuse me, new business conditional special use permit, case number 2. This is Riviera University application and acceptance of proposed conditional use permit to allow for East Campus improvements. This is located at 436 South Main Street and 15 Clement Street. I'm going to actually hear that case in conjunction with case number 4, which is a site plan for the same owner and same location. So at first, I guess I'm going to ask that the board, with regard to new business conditional special use permit, case number 2, has anyone had a chance to review that application and like to make a motion whether it's ready for us to take jurisdiction?
So moved.
All right, so moved by Mr. Weber, a second on that? Second by Mr. Varley. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? None. Okay, let's do case number 4 at the same time here. Do I have a motion that that's also ready to take jurisdiction?
So moved.
So motion by Mr. Weber, a second. Second by Mr. Peterson. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Okay, that motion passes. Okay, do we have someone here from Riviera that wants to present? And you can go ahead and present both the conditional special use permit and the site plan together. Thanks.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, good evening. My name is Sister Paula Marie Bewley, and I'm president of Riviera University. We're pleased to be before you this evening for the matters as listed on the agenda, specifically improvements to the campus facilities related to athletics and the construction of a new science facility. We're especially pleased that we're able to define and present Riviera's commitment to the broader Nashua community. And if you're driving by Main Street by any chance during these July days, you can see that our athletic facilities are exceptionally well used by the community. So thank you for your consideration this evening, and I introduce our representative, Tim Manis.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Board. My name is Tim Manis from Durkin Edson. We've been consulting with Riviera for a number of years now, and we're here tonight to talk about the conditional use and also the site plan.
Okay. Tim, can you just give the address of your firm too, just for the record?
Yes, our firm is located, the main headquarters in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, 33 South Broad Street, Lidditz, Pennsylvania, 17543.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, how would you like me to go through the conditional use, point by point, or?
Does anybody need to hear all the points? I mean, you can probably summarize it.
The big picture is that Riviera is really in 2 zones, RA and R9, depending on which part of the campus you're on. So really, anytime we have had to come before you over the last 5 years, we've had to ask for the conditional use. That includes the gateway projects,
Right.
The Clement Street work, et cetera. And so again, tonight, we are asking for that conditional use to move ahead with the work. And to clarify, tonight we're here for the athletics part of the work. You have all seen back in April when we were here that the overall, or the overarching project here is really in 3 phases. There's the athletics, which is the athletics pavilion and softball improvements. We'll be coming back to you for the science at a later date, probably within a couple of months, and then the Muldoon Center, which is even later still. So tonight, we're really here for the Phase 1 athletics portion.
Okay.
But you can see on that plan behind you, it's kind of outlined with a white line around the softball and soccer area. So just to clarify that.
All right. Okay. So you can go ahead and present the site plan as well, and then we'll hear from, we'll take discussion.
Okay, very well. So our site plan tonight, coming before the board for consideration, includes the improvements around the athletics fields. As you know, right now, there is a synthetic turf soccer, field hockey, lacrosse field there. There's also a softball field there. What isn't there is really any supporting things that go with that, bleachers, locker rooms, or anything else. It's pretty bare. So we're really, this project is all about providing the needed facilities for really the venue, for the users, for spectators to be there. We are providing handicap parking there and parking, period. We're keeping the turnaround that's already there pretty much in the position it's in, just slightly. And there are related improvements such that have been done over the last few years at Riviera, lighting, landscaping, walkways, and such that go with that. The overall site is kind of there already. We're really adorning it with the needed kind of venue enhancements. And that's what the Phase 1 athletics piece is really all about. The other additional piece on that is that little link connector driveway from the Sylvia Trottier parking lot over to the athletics access road, which is really going to allow for greater access kind of behind the scenes there at Riviera. Open up that parking at Sylvia Trottier for people who want to, they go there now, but kind of some more convenient access on the backside there. So I could answer specific questions if you have them. That's kind of the summary of the project.
Could you just clarify, is there any work on the fields and the lighting on the fields? It's just the sort of the buildings at
Right.
the edge of the field, the two components, the parking lot with the turnaround, and then the accessory road?
The field lighting, the athletic lighting, was installed, I think, about 10 years ago.
Okay,
And it's really remaining. We're not touching it.
okay,
The field surfaces, again, we're not really working with them at all. We're staying entirely off the soccer field, because that's a synthetic turf field. We don't want to hurt that. The softball field, we'll just have to kind of dress up the edge when we're done putting the dugouts and the fencing and what have you in there.
the backstop
But-
and stuff?
Right,
Yeah.
but the outfield fence is all remaining in place, so.
Okay, all right. Other questions from the board? Mr. Weber?
Like to just say, oh,
I'm sorry. Before I forget, can I say two more things?
Sure, go ahead.
I told them I would forget if I didn't have this. We were having some discussions beforehand with our neighbors, and a couple of notes for the cover sheet of the site plan submission that we're going to revise based on that input. Note number 20 currently says, hours of use will conform to hours of operation of Riviera University. The university operates 24 hours a day. That's going to be revised to say this: hours of use will conform to the allowed hours of operation or use of fields, period. Because there are certain conditions upon the use of those fields, the lights, I think, have to be off at 10 o'clock. So that will all kind of work together with that note.
Okay.
And then we will add a note, that was note number 20. There will be another note added, note number 25 is what that will be. That will say buses waiting for athletic events to be located off-site in the area of Old Field Road. We don't want any buses kind of in that neighborhood idling. They'll be down over near Memorial Hall, most likely, in that parking lot.
sorry, so where will those,
Bottom left of that plan,
You can grab that microphone if you want to pull it
Oh.
out, and you can walk up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tim, I have a,
oh,
that would help.
or you can use that, yeah.
my batteries are dead.
I-
All right, thank you.
Sure.
So, that area is right down here. This is, I'm sorry, that area is down here. That's Memorial Hall. That's the big parking lot behind Memorial. So those buses would come down here, no matter where they're dropping off at, and hang out until the teams are ready to go away. So that's a note number 25. And while I'm looking at the cover sheet, note number 26 on the cover sheet says permit approvals required for this project. There's an A, B, and C on there. Alteration of terrain permit and approval date. We talked to New Hampshire DES today. They have the permit. It's been assigned to a reviewer, and they believe we'll hear back within a week to 10 days on that. So that's in progress. Nashua Conservation Commission wetlands application, that has gone through the process, and they met on the 3rd, I think, and that was approved. And the, actually subsequent to that, then the zoning board met 2 nights ago, I was here for that, and gave us our approval to work in the buffer, the 20-foot buffer of the wetlands. And I think Linda has that correspondence actually with her. So those two pieces are put together, at least the zoning part is, and the NCC. The voluntary lot merger, I'm going to have to actually ask, that has been submitted and I think all done, right?
Yes, it's been recorded.
Okay, so the voluntary lot merger, what that's all about is, and I'm sure you've seen this in your packages, this is located, there are actually 2 large lots here.
Yep.
There was a lot line running right through the middle of the building. So Riviera undertook just to merge those lots together, which is allowed in your
Yep.
ordinances.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, that was the stuff I was supposed to say.
No problem. Ed, go ahead.
Like to say, it's a beautiful campus, went and visited it. I go by it all the time when I go to Nashua Country Club to do work. While I was there, building 29B, just behind Early Learning, and the Dion Center, both have dumpsters that aren't enclosed. And with your project going forward, I'd like you to look at those.
Okay.
And see if it's a possibility. Well, the Dion Center, you're working on the facade, it's showing.
Okay, you're talking about next to the loading dock back there?
Yes.
Okay, I know what you're talking about now. The other one, I'm not sure where that is, 29B.
It's the Early Learning Center, and then you go up, and there's a building up there.
Broussard Hall.
I don't know.
Oh,
But
it's a
anyway,
dorm.
on the
Okay.
back of that, there's just a dumpster that's there.
Okay.
So if you could, when you're doing the construction, if you could look at those, it's not going to be part of any stipulation,
Right.
okay? That'd be added to this because it's kind of outside of that scope.
Correct.
But you guys have a beautiful campus, and so I just brought that up.
We've been chasing the details down, so that's a couple of them right there. Good.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Varley?
So a quick question, in terms of the timing, my understanding is, you're saying this, so there's gonna be the new connection driveway there,
Yes, sir.
and ultimately, I think I'm looking at the plan right, you're gonna be removing, there's an existing turnoff off of South Main Street to go to the gym.
As part of the next project, the
So-
Phase 2 projects, yes. You're talking about, if I can find where that is, where did they go?
Pressing the wrong button.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about the driveway that's right here.
Correct.
Yes, that ultimately goes away. Actually, the science building ultimately will go across that, and that will move away.
But that's not being affected in this first phase.
This first phase doesn't touch that. We don't even have those drawings done yet. We haven't submitted to you that site plan.
And I'm just, the reason I'm asking is I know there's summer camps going on right now, and
Yes.
I'm just wondering whether any of this is going to, how or whether it's going to impact, you know, the camps at all in terms of access or,
I think we're going to have an intentional conversation about that with Riviera as we go through this and talk about managing the traffic flow on those, for those camps, yes. So,
Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Dickren.
thank you. I didn't see in the packet a response to the number of comments, which I think are pretty significant from the engineering department. So, did you address them?
yes, we did. We actually submitted a letter with responses to all the planning and engineering comments. I guess, I don't know if that went in your packets or not. Site plan response is dated June 29th, actually, yes.
Okay.
Do you have any particular one, or?
Well, that didn't make it to in the packet, but let me ask a couple of questions.
Okay.
Because looking at the plan, for instance, pipe slopes, I saw, the plan is not very clear here, but 35% to 38% slope on one pipe. Is that
Is that on the sewer pipes or on the
It could be,
stormwater,
it could be a
or-
drainage pipe.
Okay. I might have to ask for help from my engineer who's here tonight for that question specifically,
Oh,
so.
no, I was just, so I could make out in the plan maybe several pipes that are over 10% in slope. I mean, my question would be, is the engineer addressing that high slope factor?
You have a thought on that, Mike? You can, Mike Smith is here also, civil engineer, and he can maybe help address that question.
Yeah, I mean, there are pipes right now that are in excess of 10%, given the topography that's out there from where we have to get. It's our opinion that because of being at the top of the hill, the drainage that's gonna come through those pipes is minimal. So we're not overly concerned at all about the velocity or any of that. We can adjust the pipes. The issue just becomes that's, you know, gonna be ledge and stuff that we have to get through to accommodate the excessive depth that'll be at the upper end to be able to drop that pipe to that slope. So we felt that it was, again, because the minimal drainage area from the top of the hill, that it was better to have the pipes exceed the 10% as opposed to trying to get down through the ledge. So that's where we were at.
I do understand the need to put a steep slope, it's just I wanted to make sure that, you know, any future problems would be anticipated and addressed.
Sure.
There was another question here regarding the routing of the spillway for the 100-year storm towards South Main Street. That must have been addressed in the letter, but could you just?
Yeah, so the question, or the comment in the letter was, if the spillway was to overtop, where does that runoff go? So in the response, we did provide both a written description as well as a illustrative sketch with flow arrows, and just, bottom? Just to, so the basin is kind of in this area, the spillway is located right near the intersection of where that parking lot and that parking lot are. So any overflow through that spillway actually follows the drive and would get down this way towards the intersection. And that's the existing condition. We're not changing that at all. In fact, with the future project, I would say it would probably be improved because of the modifications to the driveway that would be associated with the science building.
Okay, that's all I had.
Okay. We did have, in our packet tonight, this letter from the National Fire Marshal's Office. Have you seen this with regard to hydrant location?
We've only exchanged some emails. It's our intent to have a fire hydrant up there in that area somewhere in the circle.
Yeah, they're looking for a hydrant within 100 feet of the building.
Yes.
With or with, even if it's sprinkling, so, okay, so that's your intent? Other questions for the applicant? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
At this time, I would ask, does anybody wishing to speak in opposition or concern to the plan, please come forward, state your name and address, and let us know what your either opposition, concerns, or questions might be. I'll now ask, is anybody wishing to speak in favor of the plan? Okay. Does the board have any other questions before I close the hearing of either the applicant or staff? Okay, at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing, move into the public meeting. So we have sort of two applications in front of us. Remember, one's the conditional special use permit, or conditional use permit. The second one being the site plan. We did see this stuff a couple of weeks ago. I think everybody's got a pretty good understanding of the scope here. There was a few comments by the applicant regarding the modification to a few of the notes on the plan, one in particular regarding the operating hours, so that might be valuable to talk about as a stipulation, typically with regard to operating hours in particular. And the other one is with regard to the buses, and their location being that they don't wait in the area of the project site, but sort of off-site down by Memorial Hall, I believe, so.
Are those ones that he said that were gonna be on the drawing, right?
On the plan, right?
On
So
the plans?
Presumably the condition would be then that they would agree to add them to the plan.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
would that be part of the, to come under,
It's the cover sheet.
right, but,
Yeah, I think you'd probably add another stipulation with those two items. You could
I
probably
thought it might
combine
be
'em.
because the minor drafts, minor, number 3.
Yeah, it's up to you folks. I think when you talk operating hours, you may want to be a little specific. I'm not sure that's a drafting thing. That's more of a, yeah. So, but
Yeah.
it's up to the maker of the motion, I guess. My opinion would be that one of those has to do with waiting buses. That could be a potential issue for abutters, and the other one has to do with hours of, which could also be an abutter issue. So I'd personally prefer to see them as stipulations. But it seems like they're gonna do it. That's an issue, so. Anybody else? Anything? No?
I would just add that, I mean, I concur with Ed that I think they've done a really nice job at the campus. I really like the improvements being proposed, and by all accounts, they seem to be a good neighbor, so, and they did a really good job, addressing comments when they came in here, back in April, so.
Yeah, I think the other sort of administrative stuff here, there's 2 waivers being requested. Number 1 and number 2 on the staff stipulation, so if you're gonna make a motion, you can address those. And we do have the letter from Mark in the inspector from the fire marshal's office. It indicates that they're, want the hydrant. You might wanna, I don't know if is that anywhere in here? I don't think so.
Well, stipulation 6 refers to June 12th. but
Yeah, you
that-
probably could just add to that. Could say, the letter from Adam Pouliot, and maybe just add and Mark Rapatelia. Could probably do it that way.
Yeah, 'cause they're both in the fire.
They're related, but you might wanna add that second letter
Yeah.
to that stipulation number 6. Anybody wanna make a motion? Or need more discussion?
If there's no further discussion, I will make a motion.
Okay, let's start with, number 2.
I would make a motion to approve new business number 2, conditional use permit, owner applicant Riviera University, finding that the proposal does meet the requirements outlined in site plan NRO section 190-133F with no stipulations.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve new business number 2. Do we have a second on that? Second by Mr. Rapucci. Any further discussion on this number 2 item? No? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. Okay. How about with regard to new business number 4, site plan?
So I will make a motion to approve new business number 4, site plan, again, owner applicant Riviera University, finding that it does meet the requirements outlined in site plan NRO section 190-146D, with a total of 12 stipulations, stipulations 1 and 2 both being waiver requests, both reading is granted and will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. 2 through 5, as written in the staff report, I would amend stipulation number 6 to indicate that prior to the issuance of the building permit, all comments in an email from Adam Pouliot dated June 12th, 2018, and from and an email from Mark Rapaglia dated July 9th, 2018. Stipulations 7 through 11 is written in the staff report, and then an additional stipulation 12 indicating that the applicant will add 2 notes to the plan, to the cover sheet on the plan, as indicated during the testimony. One that would modify note 20 regarding the hours of use will conform to allowed hours for the fields, and a new note indicating that buses waiting for event pickup drop-off will be located on campus driveways and not on neighborhood roads.
Okay, so we have that motion to approve with the stipulations as indicated by Mr. Varley. Do we have a second on that? Second by Mr. Rapucci. Any discussion? Nope. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay. So, new business subdivision plans. Case number 3, George H. Barnett and Annette H. Sotheran Barnett. Application and acceptance of proposed 2-lot subdivision. Property is located at 50 Raymond Street. Does anyone want to make a motion that this application is ready to take jurisdiction?
Before we do, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Weber, go ahead.
I might have the same thing to say.
Quite possibly.
I don't see enough information on this plan as what we usually get. There is not the entrance area. I visited the space, and it has a big slope right in the beginning. And we need contour drawings, entrance area, location of the house, approximate location of the house, somewhere in there. And I don't think it fits, I don't see enough information for me to make a reasonable conclusion of what, should this be approved or not.
So I had a similar concern, and I guess I just wanted to return to staff, and because there's a letter we have, packet, that came in tonight from Peter Kohami, raising similar concerns about whether there's sufficient information in the plan for us to consider it, and I just was hoping that staff could maybe comment on that as to whether there've been discussions about that, and whether there's a sense that, you know, and Steve, I don't know if you can comment too, as to whether engineering, planning has had, you know, sufficient information to evaluate the plan.
Well, I think it's very clear from the letter from Peter Kalami that there are concerns with the plan, that it's not accurate that was submitted, or that contours weren't drawn completely, and some missing information. If you're doing a subdivision, we want to make sure that, number one, you can connect to the sewers, you can have proper drainage that complies with state law and your regulations, and complies with zoning. If you cannot connect to sewer, or if there's an issue, and I don't know that there is, or if there's enough information here to make that determination. And perhaps Engineer Dukran can, you know, maybe speak to that as well from an engineering perspective. But there is doubt in my mind.
Is that the only concern, is the sewer connection?
You can't subdivide it if you don't, you
No,
need
no.
more room for septic.
I'm just asking, is there any, is that the specific?
Drainage is another one.
Right, that's why is that a concern of the planning department?
Yes.
It is, it's a
Well,
requirement.
I just would like you to speak to it so that we understand it's not just the sewer.
Yeah, well, I just explained, I don't know what the drainage is. If the existing conditions plan is not drawn correctly, my staff reviewed that, the city engineer reviewed that, and noticed that there was an issue. And I think that's the sort of thing that we need to have when we get plans in and submitted to us, that they're drawn accurately. Certainly, I believe this one was stamped by a surveyor, and if it's not correct, it's not correct. Maybe it should be redrawn and then resubmitted. The board certainly can look at it and consider it tonight if you want to. I think Peter Kalami's memo addresses the situation, and hopefully maybe Steve could elaborate that from an engineering perspective.
So, I'm reading Mr. Kohalmi's letter. We all got tonight. I don't know if anybody wants any more time to read it. But it does talk about a lot of stuff here. You know, I'm sure the engineer will make the argument that it's not required by regulations to show all of this stuff. We've heard that before. The last time I got into a discussion regarding this, I probably was threatened with a libel suit. I don't know if you remember that. But anyway, what it boils down to is that the city gets in a pretty bad predicament after a plan is approved without important information, and it goes into construction, and I think the city is pretty much forced at that point in time to give in, because here you have an owner and a contractor who are trying to get something built. And the engineering plan that was approved at the planning board, that for the most part, there were problems that weren't shown because the engineering wasn't done to its fullest extent that we should be seeing, that we see with other plans. So some of them are pointed out here. You got to know what your sill is going to be. You got to know where your drive is going to occur. We talked about the sewer. We talked about the drainage, the grading, the impact to neighbors. Those are the things that we continue to review here as a board as we make a decision. And I suppose this plan is deficient in many aspects.
Mr. Rabucci?
Yeah, so I look at Mr. Kalami's email from July 11th. Should the planning board approve this plan, a thorough evaluation of any proposed improvements will need to be made by the city engineering department prior to any permits being issued. So the owner and contractor will need to submit an engineering plan that includes but is not limited to the foundation, building, driveway, site drainage, and sewer utility connections. If we were to stipulate those requirements, would that satisfy what you're raising? In other words, if we were to look at this plan and then stipulate that this requirement laid out by Mr. Kalami, I hope I'm saying his name right, the deputy city engineer, if we stipulate that that is included or is required before any permits are issued, would that satisfy what the concerns are of the city? No.
Okay, so Mr. Kohalmi is actually in the audience today. He's a replacement. He's doing the job at Jean Walker. Remember her name? Okay. This is a first attempt that stipulation that's suggested that we'll be seeing. We don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to guess. I mean, plans like this one have been approved in the past, and that's what the city has learned from, that it's troublesome when you go into construction. So we're thinking that a stipulation like this will work, but if you look at it, it's talking about preparing a plan, an engineered plan, a properly engineered plan that should have been done in the first place for the board to act on.
Well, I think that point is a point of dispute, right? I think there are some people that would say that it doesn't have to be done at this point. I'm not saying I have an opinion on that. I'm just saying that's the dispute, right?
Mr. Chairman, can I address the board before you fully deliberate the whole thing without ever hearing from me?
I just want to hear from these folks first. I need to do that. It's not in jurisdiction yet, so,
Well,
sorry.
It
So-
is because you're talking about plan acceptance.
Okay, well,
And being inadequate, and that's what I need to address.
Can I follow up Mr. Pucci's point with staff? Because that raises a sort of basic point in my mind, which is, does this plan, because putting aside, sort of ultimate resolution of the plan, does the plan as submitted meet the requirements of the ordinance, meet the requirements for submission of an application, or no?
Well, what brought this up, I should explain, what brought this up is we had an abutter call, and they had some concerns about the drainage, and that's what prompted to go out and revisit the site. In reading this email, it shows that the plan that was submitted, we felt did meet the ordinance. It was all right to be accepted and to take jurisdiction. However, if the plan isn't representing what's actually out there, then I think that's the question. We need to get a new plan that
And I would
shows
object to that statement. That's wrong. The plan is
We're
correct.
not on the record yet, so.
So, I mean, that's what engineering is saying, that it doesn't represent what's actually out there.
There's a contour mislabeled, that's it.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr.
Could I
Pucci.
continue with? what
Yeah,
I
go
was-
ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so the way I see this, the question that we're considering right this second is whether or not to consider this application, whether or not to accept it, right? That was the concern. Accept jurisdiction, not the merits of what's going to be done. Okay, so along those lines, the deputy engineer wrote the paragraph yesterday that I read out that indicates to me that, yeah, we can go ahead, and if we go ahead and approve it, that what he's laying out in this paragraph needs to be part of our approval, so that the requirements that he's concerned about are addressed before any permits are issued. So I'm asking, okay, can we do that? Will that satisfy the concerns of planning and of engineering if we were to accept this, get into it, and then if we decide to approve it with the stipulations laid out in this by the deputy engineer? And I think if that's a yes or no, if the answer is yes, we can do it, then I think that gives me enough confidence to say we should accept this. If the answer is no, that won't satisfy, then I think we're more in line with what Mr. Weber and has raised. That's my point.
So in order to try to answer what I believe this email is trying to say, there are two parts to it. The first part is the plan ready for acceptance? And yes, plans of this level have been accepted. Whether that was the right decision to make then, I don't know. There's that piece. Also, regardless of the error in the contours or regardless of the so-called misrepresentation of the existing topography, that's one piece. The second piece, what this email is saying, is that because of the history of the board approving plans of this level in the past, and the history of the city running into problems because of these kinds of plans, they say the deputy engineer is expecting that the plan will be approved. And should it be approved, he wants a stipulation. So it's a little bit, I guess in writing this, he wasn't sure about where this will go. So he's throwing all kinds of things out there.
Mr. Peterson?
Thank you.
In the professional engineer's email, he put 4 bullet points, and 2 of them say, we don't have enough information to make a proper evaluation. We need more information to better understand what's going on that site.
Right.
Mr. Pucci?
I think that's kind of in line with the way I'm thinking, in that he's saying they need that stuff. If I don't get it before you accept this case, I need it before any permits are issued. That's the way I'm reading this. Here are the deficiencies that I see, and you have to make sure that I have a chance to review this prior to any permits being issued, not prior to us accepting and considering the case. That's the way I'm reading it if it wasn't that way, I don't think he would have written it that way, but if he's here, we can ask him. So I'm just trying to get to, should we accept this or not accept it? So we don't get into the debate on how far we're going when we're deciding whether or not we can accept it.
Yeah, you guys just gotta make a decision for yourself at this point, whether or not you feel like you personally have enough information to hear this case, so. I'm
Okay.
just gonna ask for a motion for that, so. Somebody wanna make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Mr. Abuji.
Well, I don't want to step on Mr. Weber. You raised the first concern, so if you would like to make a motion,
I will. And
Okay.
case history we've had, and I understand what everybody's saying, but for us to make a proper decision and that it wouldn't impact an abutter, we're here to make those decisions, to make sure that the plan that we see before us has all the relevant information so we can make an intelligent decision to protect the abutters and protect the owners. And I don't feel that we have that information, and I would be inclined to table this until we get the right information,
Well, it's not a table. At this point,
Or-
we're making a motion to accept it.
or not accept it on
take
that basis,
jurisdiction
not
or
to accept.
I mean, can you just explain for the board, if we don't take jurisdiction right now, it's just pushed, is that what happens?
Okay.
Right, he'll have to
Yes, it's not,
resubmit new plans.
we're not in a
and-
hearing. We-
Okay, so,
We don't have the ability to.
so my thing is that we would not accept it, the plan as
Mr. Chairman,
shown.
before you make a motion, I would wish to address application acceptance. You can't deny me that opportunity to speak on application acceptance.
I can, but I'll give you, we have time frames. We need to move on, so I'll give
Yes,
you
I
2
hear you.
minutes. Okay.
I don't know what's in your packet, but you have a letter dated June 29th from Peter Kalami, Deputy City Engineer. And it essentially says, in his last sentence, the plans can be advanced to the planning board for review with the understanding that these minor comments can be addressed prior to approval. You also have a letter from the city's outside consulting engineer dated June 27th, which is one of the stipulations suggested in the staff report, that says, per note 20 in the subdivision plan, a driveway plan with proposed grading shall be approved by the city and engineer department prior to the issuance of a building permit for a single-family home. The standard stormwater letter should also be submitted. The problem here is, this lot is gonna be sold to a third party. You have no idea what kind of house they wanna put on here. They have no idea where they wanna put the garage, left, right, under, rear, front-facing, side-facing. You can't do an engineering plan until you have the homeowner's idea what he wants to put for a house there. Whatever I might put on this plan is totally bogus. I'll give you a Mickey Mouse little house, which is useless for you. You're reviewing nothing. Plus, you're trying to make engineering decisions which belong with the city engineer's office and, to some degree, the planning department. Without knowing what kind of house is going there, where it's gonna be, there's nothing to review. And further to that, under the RSA's, you're approving a lot under the zoning, that it meets the zoning requirements. You're not approving the construction of a house, or the details of how it's constructed, or where the driveway goes. You're not approving any of those things. That's not in your jurisdiction. That's part of engineering. So this plan is complete with regard to what you have jurisdiction over, which is a subdivision to create a building, 2 lots where there's 1. It's not here for you to review how to construct a house. That's not your expertise, it's not your ability. The second thing is, the so-called inaccuracies is a mislabeling of one of the contours, period. That's all that is, and it's, but I would say to you that the deputy city engineer has already told that the plan is sufficient for planning board review. And then he writes this letter this morning with a bunch of statements in here which don't reflect what engineer Cormier has said and what he said previously in his correspondence. So I'm not sure what's going on. But in any regard, you're accepting a plan with regard to subdivision of a lot 1 into 2. That's what you're doing. You're not reviewing driveways, you're not reviewing house locations, and you're not reviewing drainage. Those are all part of the engineer's office's jurisdiction. And that's why the notes on the plan, especially, I forget it is 20 or 21, which says that before building permit is issued, that a detailed engineered plan shall be reviewed and approved by the engineer's office. Because only at that time, when somebody wants to apply for a building permit, will we know what they want to do with this lot. What kind of house, where it's gonna be, where the driveway is gonna be, where the garages are gonna be. Is it 2-story, single-story? None of those things can be known at this point in time.
Okay.
That's what kind of information you get on a subdivision, on a residential subdivision plan. This is not a commercial site plan. So, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Indulgence.
Appreciate it. All right, so you've heard what the engineer has to say, you've heard what the board, so, Mr. Weber, is your
I'd like to
motion
hear
still on the?
what the rest of them, I'm fine.
Well, did you start a
Oh.
motion? Why don't we second your motion and then we can discuss it? Is that the right way to do
Go
it?
ahead and state your
Yep.
motion. So, right now, we have a motion that the plan is not ready for us to take jurisdiction. That's the only motion we have in front of us. Do we have a second on
To
that?
be clear, Mr. Weber, did you make that motion?
Nobody made a motion.
No,
No, okay.
Okay.
All
Are you-
right. So we don't have any
No.
motion yet.
no.
Okay.
So, does somebody want to make a motion? Mr. Rapucci?
Well, for myself, my question has been answered. I think the way I read the letter was that we can accept this. We have to make sure that we include the requirements that the city engineering department has the opportunity to approve all the detail that we have on the table right now, before any permits are issued. Personally, that sounds right to me, that there's logic to why we would do it that way. So my point of view would be, we accept it and consider the site plan and not beyond it.
So I'm just gonna put in my 2 cents. So we have a green card in front of us that has 10 items on it that we have to be able to evaluate. I don't personally think I can evaluate these 10 items with the application that's in front of me, so I'm not gonna vote to accept it.
Yeah, and
Anybody can go ahead and make a motion. Go ahead.
I would concur with that statement.
What specifically is it that's not satisfied?
I don't wanna go on the merits. I can't evaluate all 10 of these with the information I have in front of me.
Yeah, what I would say is, I think you're right. It sounds like, as Linda said, that the plan as originally submitted met the sort of the bare criteria of the ordinance. However, when engineering went out there, looked at the site, they said, we can't evaluate the site properly based on the plan that was submitted. So to me, and this is not the first time that we've heard that, and it seems to me that if, I would rather have a plan that's not just meeting the bare criteria, but is sufficient from planning and engineering's perspective to be able to make a proper evaluation. And if they can't make the evaluation, I don't feel like I can make the evaluation.
Mr. Robbins?
To move this forward, I'd like to make a motion, and I'd like to do it in a positive sense, so I'm going to move that we accept the plan.
Okay, so we have a motion in front of us to accept the plan as submitted to take jurisdiction. Any
I'll
second?
second.
Second by Mr. Rapucci. Any other further discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think respectfully, I think if someone is going to have an opinion to vote against accepting it, I think a general statement is not adequate. I think there has to be a clearly articulated reason, and I think of these 10 conditions, you need to clearly articulate what conditions are not satisfied.
I disagree. We're not considering the merits. We're considering whether we have sufficient information to accept the plan, whether the plan is complete. We'd be looking at these conditions.
Well, I'm only saying it, sir, because Mr. Leclerc
Right.
brought this up when he said he
Right,
wasn't
but
gonna.
what he said is, he didn't say, I don't think it meets these criteria. He said, I don't think I have sufficient information to judge.
To evaluate
Right.
those criteria.
Okay.
So that's okay. We all have our own opinions on it. It doesn't, we don't have to agree, so. So we have a motion. Any other discussion? Mr. Peterson?
I think we may have more peace of mind if we knew that if the city engineer, the professional engineer, agreed that the existing conditions plan matched the actual site. He say they don't, the plan doesn't match the terrain. So if he was in agreement that the paperwork matched the actual physical location, that would give me a lot more inclination to just proceed with accepting the applicant's plan.
Any
We'd have to
further
have a public
discussion?
meeting for that, too.
Yeah, at this point, we're in the application acceptance phase. So, any other further discussion? No? Okay, so all those in favor of taking jurisdiction?
Aye.
Anybody else?
You in favor?
We have
You
one.
made the motion and you're not in favor of it?
So to move it along.
Okay.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Hey,
Any abstentions? No?
that's all that count.
1, 2, 3,
7,
4,
1.
5, 6, 7 to 1. 1, 7.
Right.
Okay, we're moving on.
Can I have a delineation of what is missing from the plan? You can't make a general motion like that without outlining what you want to see on the plan. You have yet to say what is inadequate.
I think you heard the discussion.
No.
Yeah, I don't think we're obligated to do that.
Oh, yes, you are. You have to give a reason for your motion. You cannot give a general response like that.
There was a detailed discussion.
Attorney
Motion
Valley, you
made,
know
was
different.
seconded, And approved.
No, you have to give specific reasons, Attorney Valley, and you know it.
I'm moving on to the next item. So, that motion is, that application hasn't moved forward. Okay, so I've got new business site plan, case number 5. Should be for the owner of BAE Systems, application acceptance of proposed site plan amendment to NR 1356 to construct a 40-car parking lot. This property is located at 35 Canal Street. Anybody had a chance to take a look at this site plan?
Chairman, before we start, I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay.
Family member. Did- oh, guess what?
We'll wait for you, Ed. Can you
You
hang
go.
on a minute?
Ed, just a quick question. I thought you had originally said, I thought it was the other plan. Is it this one, the BAE?
BAE.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
I was just
BAE,
making sure it was the
yeah.
correct one.
I'll let you do that.
And just a reminder on this one, we have a second plan that was, and maybe you could address when, you know, the two different plans is. So go ahead and state your name and.
Mr. Chairman, board members, my name is Derek Gagnon. I'm actually the facility manager for BAE Systems at our Canal Street
Oh,
location.
hang on a sec. I did ask for a motion, but Mr. Weber had stepped out, so we still need a motion to take jurisdiction. Okay, so we have a motion. Maggie, are you taking the notes? Okay. So we have a motion by Mr. Robbins. Is a second? Second by Mr. Peterson. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, none. Okay, that motion passes. Go ahead. Start from the beginning.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Derek Gagnon. I'm actually the facility manager for our 95 and 35 Canal Street location in Nashua, New Hampshire. I'm here to seek your consideration to use a current property at 35 Canal Street that had a one-story building back in 2013 demolished from that location. We're looking to reutilize that piece of property to accommodate significant growth at the facility. And secondary, we're trying to, we think it would be a good look to Canal Street to basically put a structure, a parking lot with some landscaping ability on Canal Street to help alleviate what's currently there right now, which is an open lot with some planters. So we're seeking consideration for that approval.
Okay. So, just to clarify for us, the two plans we have, can you, I don't know if you or staff can delineate what, is there differences between the two? Just because I don't see a ton of difference, so just.
Yeah, so we submitted a new plan, I believe it was this past Monday.
The 9th, yeah, is the second one, yep.
Basically, we did have some, there was some current design that they wanted added to the plan, which we did show,
Okay.
existing conditions.
Oh,
And-
some more existing conditions?
Correct. And there was some, there was a typo, I'm not sure if that got updated on the current plan that the planning board.
It says 10 by 20, please.
It's a 9 by 20. It was, the plan that was proposed previously showed a 9 by 18, but it's actually a 9 by 20, and it was
Okay.
verified, field verified by our PE, Dennis Lombard.
That's the parking space size?
Correct.
Yep, okay. All right. Questions from the board on this application? Anybody have any questions?
Quick question.
Yep.
So just trying to understand it's only a partial basement?
Excuse me?
The building that was demolished it's a partial basement?
Partial, correct.
Partial. And that's what you want to use for your stormwater storage?
Correct.
Okay. You mentioned significant growth at VAE,
Yes, sir.
but in your letter, I'm not trying to make an argument, but in order to get a waiver for the traffic evaluation, you talked about no increase in traffic.
Correct. So
So I'm trying to put the two together.
Yep, so this is only a small part of our strategic plan to provide parking for the people at Canal Street. We have other options that are currently being utilized, off-site parking. But what we're trying to do is we're hearing back from our employees saying the inconvenience of off-site parking compared to on-site parking. So we understand it's only a small little dent to our problem, but we want to make sure that we're moving forward to utilize any property that we have on site. So we have very limited parking. We can't meet the need of our population with the current spaces for parking, but we understand that this is only a little bit of an improvement, but it's part of our strategic approach to try to accommodate the growth.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions?
Just a
Mr.
quick
Farley?
question, and I apologize if you already addressed this.
That's okay.
There's we have the June 28th, or sorry, June 22nd letter from engineering in our packet, and a couple of the items that are referred to are sort of just minor corrections on the plan, and it says the plans don't need to be resubmitted, but it does refer to repairing certain portions of the sidewalk.
Yes, sir.
And I'm just wondering if you could comment on that, or are you in agreement with that in terms of the
So our resubmittal this past Monday did address that,
okay.
and we submitted it to the city engineer's office and got approval with the current plan.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? None at this time? Okay, thanks. At this time, I'd ask, is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak in opposition or concern to this plan? If you do, just come on forward and state your name and address. Looks like there's none. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of? Again, looks like there are none. Any other questions the board may have for the applicant or for staff during the hearing? None? Okay. Thanks. We're gonna go ahead and close the public hearing on this, and move into the meeting. So we have in front of us a new 39-car parking lot in the location where there was a building. The building's already been raised, that's my understanding. We had some discussion about the traffic component, but the applicant talked about it. There's a few waivers in the packet, if anybody can kind of take a look at those, 1, 2, and 3. Talk about those. We did address some of the questions of the city engineer, but anybody have any further thoughts on this?
I have a question to staff.
Yeah.
Lighting, parking lot lighting, was there a waiver
No, the
needed for
only-
that?
The only lighting that's going to be added is on the existing poles that are there already.
Okay.
They're not adding any proposed lighting. Just stuff that's on the existing Eversource poles, I believe?
Yes, that's what it said. But
Just that.
so they're not required to put lighting conforming to city standards?
Well, they're not gonna add any, other lighting to their plan. I mean, if you wanna make it a waiver, but it's really not required. I mean, they're gonna put, I think, whatever Eversource is their requirements, from what I
Correct.
understand.
Correct.
So the lot lighting there is Eversource's pole and light, it's not the applicant's.
Correct.
So, Steve, you're concerned that there's a minimum requirement for lighting that we need
For
to make sure is
for
addressed?
parking lot lighting there.
Yeah.
It's an interpretation of the ordinance, so I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the Eversource poles, that are, and it's gonna be on their poles, and it's gonna be, I think, whatever they suggest,
Correct.
Eversource suggests. So
Correct.
They're not
So-
adding additional lighting to the site, except those.
What is your concern that the existing may or may not be adequate, but we don't know because we
Oh.
don't have a lighting plan?
Or too much
Yeah.
photometrics and all of that we see in for the site plans.
Yeah, if it's Eversource's light, though.
Yeah.
It's not
but
the applicant.
It's lighting on private property, not lighting on public right of
Well,
way.
that's my confusion, I guess. Are you talking street lights or are these parking lot lights?
So there are going to be parking lot lights on the Eversource pole that we're going to be renting from Eversource.
Okay. Yeah, so there is new lighting here on that.
Would you wanna make it a condition of
Did you see
approval
the
that they'll
letter?
meet city standards?
Yeah, we could add that as a stipulation. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward,
That they will meet the city
Requirement.
standards,
that they had to do the calculation and that the lighting
submit to staff?
meet the requirements in the ordinance. We could add that, I think.
Is that okay?
We're not adding actual polls. I don't know if people comfortable with that. We're in the meeting at this point, so we can talk about it. Anything? Questions?
I have an unrelated question, but.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
I'm just, the traffic waiver we've already discussed. I was wondering if you could just quickly address the other two waivers for the landscape plan and the existing conditions plan. And just precise, because I know we have an existing conditions plan, and it sounds like we made some updates, so I'm just curious as to what is exactly the waivers.
We're in the, if you want to talk to that.
Did you close the hearing?
I think so, yeah. So we want to open it back up, right?
No, I don't think it was.
I didn't
I
think
think
Oh,
it
I
was
didn't close it yet? Okay, go ahead then. Yeah, you can talk. I thought I did, sorry. Go ahead. You can ask it of the applicant then. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so if you could just briefly address those two waiver requests?
Yep, so we believe the landscaping shown on the desired plan, what we're looking at is, we're asking for a waiver because we are adding some landscaping there, but it doesn't meet the city ordinance, but we're looking to get a waiver associated with that because we are adding some trees and some greenery onto a structure or an area that we believe will be sufficient. So one of the waivers that we're requesting is to waive the landscaping requirement at its full extent.
So it's the islands, basically. Yeah, normally we'd have them every 10 spaces, they'd have islands.
Correct.
Right now, they're showing it just on the end of the lot.
So the business need there, we would really lose too many spots to try to accommodate our goal there.
I'm just wondering about because the waiver says it's a waiver for submission of a landscape plan, but it sounds like it's more than that. It's actually a waiver of the landscape requirements. I'm just wondering if that's
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's landscape shown on the plan, so,
right.
but it's just the wording of the waiver.
And typically, they would have on their site plan, they would have a landscaping plan showing where they're proposing different landscaping. I mean, this is a small site, it's gonna be used predominantly for parking. The waiver for a landscape island every 10 spaces is typically for interior islands,
Okay,
not,
so not a single double-loaded.
right. I mean, in this one, it's a small site, they are gonna be putting in trees, and they are doing as much as they can to help buffer it. It just doesn't meet the ordinance, so they're not submitting a full landscape package with it.
But I just want to clarify, is the waiver, I understand there's not a separate landscape plan, but is the waiver just for the landscape plan, or do they need an additional waiver with respect to the landscaping itself?
Just to submit a landscape plan.
Okay.
Okay, so
Thank
that's
you.
what's in the package.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right, actually, close, close the hearing.
Clarification, so has there been a landscape plan submitted?
No.
No.
Do you think, and we need one, is that the, our instruction?
No, I was distinguishing because I was confused about whether they needed waivers for both submission of the landscape plan and then the landscaping requirements. And then to say, no, the waiver is, they just need a waiver from the submission of the plan.
Right.
There's not an additional issue in terms of substantively whether the landscaping complies.
So we can waive the,
We can
The
waive
plan.
the
Submission of a
submission of the
plan.
plan.
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, I would just indicate that the plan does have landscaping on it.
Yes.
There is some shown, so if you kind of have interest, there is some indicated there. Any other questions for the applicant? No? Okay. All right, so I will officially close the hearing. Go into the meeting. Any other discussion during the meeting here? So, anybody? No? If not, let's take a motion. Anybody?
Make a motion?
Okay, go ahead.
Make a motion to approve new business number 5, site plan, finding that it does meet the requirements outlined in site plan NRO section 190-146D, with a total of 11 stipulations. The first 3 stipulations are all waiver requests. All reading is granted, will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. Stipulations 4 through 10, as written in the staff report, and then adding a stipulation number 11 to require that any lighting on the site will comply with city ordinances.
All right, so we have that motion to approve with the 11 stipulations as indicated by Mr. Barley. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Peterson. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Motion passes. Thanks.
For your time.
Okay. All right. Okay, you back?
I'm back.
So, new business site plan, case number 6, Grace Lutheran Church owner, application and acceptance of proposed site plan amendment to NR 1756 to construct a 1,675 square foot building addition with associated improvements. Do I have a motion that this application is complete and ready to take jurisdiction?
so moved.
A motion by Mr. Peterson. Any seconds?
Who made the motion? I'm sorry.
Mr. Peterson, second. Anybody? Mr. Robbins, any further discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. You go ahead and present the plan.
Good evening. My name is Nathan Chamberlain with Fieldstone Land Consultants. I'm here with a couple of representatives from the Grace Lutheran Church. And as stated, we're here for a 1,675 square foot addition. It's kind of hard to see up there, but I'll get a better picture of it from the rendering. So, the shaded area right there is what we're talking about, the addition. The existing church is here, and then there's a community center down here. Those are both existing, obviously. There's no new seating proposed. They call it a narthex, which is a fancy Latin term for a lobby. And so they just want to enhance the existing structure and provide a better meeting space for their people, the congregants that come to the church. And as you look at the elevation there, it's this piece right here,
Yep.
and then the little wings on either side to connect the main church and then the community center over here. So The parcel is approximately 6.5 acres. It's located in 2 zones. The existing use and the proposed use are both allowed in both of those zones. It's R18 and the PI zone. And, you know, we're several hundred feet back off of Spitbrook Road in the center of the site. As I mentioned, the existing facility is 225 seats. There will be no new seats, there are no new seats proposed with this addition. I think it's approximately 122 spaces on site, and that works out to 1.8 seats per space. And the city's minimum is 1.5, so we're within the threshold there. So there's an existing entryway that's in the underneath that shaded area that'll be taken down, obviously. And there's some concrete sidewalks that lead up to that existing entrance that'll be reworked. So there's some new flat work proposed. There's a patio in the back of the addition as well. So it's very minimal impervious cover proposed once you take away what's already there. It's probably less than a modest house. But we are proposing some drainage improvements in the front yard. There's a couple small rain gardens that have an overflow into the closed drainage system. You know, the rim set above the bottom. So basically the water quality volume goes in there and goes into the ground, and the larger storms will overtop and go out. You know, there's no new utility taps proposed. Everything's existing on site, brought in off Spitbrook Road. We are proposing 1 new light pole in the front, and there's some, you know, benches and some enhancements there proposed. And that's about it. I mean, we are asking for a handful of waivers, as mentioned in the staff memo. I can speak to those if you need me to. One thing I noticed in the staff memo, it said that we did not respond to the engineering review, which we had, and engineering, it was sent out to Robert Cormier, and he had a couple of minor comments. One, the existing condition plan didn't have contour labels, which was done. And then the patio, there's a retaining wall on the along the low side of the patio here that didn't have a railing, so we specified a railing there. And we did submit a letter to this, you know, back addressing those comments. And, you know, the deputy city engineer, Kohalmi, his letter said that the comments are not serious enough to warrant a resubmittal to engineering. So we didn't resubmit to engineering. We did make those changes and submit back to planning with our resubmittal on the 28th. So any questions of that, I can speak to that as well. We submitted a drainage letter saying that you know, the improvements were minimal and didn't require a full drainage study. That's in your packet. We also submitted a letter addressing traffic. Basically, there's no new seats proposed, therefore no new trips, and therefore a traffic study is not warranted either. And we submitted the waiver request letter. The rest of the stuff was checklist items, which we went through and addressed all those and resubmitted on the 28th. If there's any questions, I can answer them.
Can you just, there's a waiver for lighting requirements for the site.
Sure, so,
I know there's a lighting plan in here. Is there an overspill, or is there something?
no, there's no overspill. There's an existing parking lot there, obviously, and there's existing light poles in that parking lot.
Okay.
So we don't have the specifics of those light poles, so our lighting, you know, who does the lighting plan did not include those in his analysis. He only analyzed the proposed light. The new light, and that's what's in your packet on the plans. So we asked for a waiver for doing the whole site, which theoretically has already gone through site plan approval and should have been approved at that time. The existing lighting should have been approved at that time.
So I guess I'm confused why we need a maybe this isn't a question for me, for staff. Is the existing lighting that's on the site outside of what's been modeled?
So if it's already been approved in the site plan, maybe we don't.
So is there really a waiver required, I guess, I'm just wondering. I feel like we're asking to waive something that maybe we don't need to waive. So, am I accurate?
I mean, typically, they would submit a lighting plan for the full site. The site's already been approved. It already met the requirements of the ordinance for the lighting. So they're just asking for a waiver now for the new lighting that's being proposed?
No, we're asking for a waiver to include the existing lights
Oh,
in
okay,
the
to
lighting
include the
analysis.
existing, okay.
All right, so we might.
So that's
wanna-
already been approved and reviewed by the planning board.
Right.
So we might be able to eliminate that.
All of the new lighting meets all the new
Correct.
requirements.
Yep.
Okay, well, we can talk about that after, but all you're asking for is not to have to show the existing lighting on the site that's already there and been, what you feel has been approved.
Right, not to do a photometric plan of the existing lights. I mean, we have the lights located, they're on the plan,
Mhm.
they're shown in the parking lot.
Okay. All right. Mr. Weber?
You have a dumpster in the back,
Yes?
and I'm just wondering, are you going to eventually, are you gonna, part of this construction, would you be willing to enclose that dumpster?
It's certainly something we could take into consideration.
That's all I'm gonna ask, because it's out, just take it in consideration, won't be a stipulation.
Okay.
Because it's not, you can't see it from the street.
Right, it's pretty well hidden from the street.
It is,
Yeah.
but it's, people who are there might like to not see it at all,
Sure.
you know? But
Yep.
just consider it, and that was it.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Questions for staff here? No? Okay. At this time, I'd ask, is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak in opposition or concerns for the plan? No? Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the plan? No? Any further questions from the board to the staff or the applicant before we close the hearing? I think I might just want to, not to harp on it, just get clarification on that lighting waiver. So if we're just looking to waive the lighting photometrics for the existing lighting on the
Correct.
site, should we be specific about that with that waiver?
You could
'Cause
either.
we're not waiving the requirement for that lighting to meet any city ordinances.
Right, just
Now
to
it's
show the photometrics for
Just
the
to
existing
show
lighting.
the photometrics. There'll be a waiver to show. Which waives
There's a waiver
the
to show
lighting
photometrics.
photometrics. Existing. Okay. All right. Any other questions? No? At this point, I'll go ahead and close the hearing, move into the meeting. So we have kind of a connector addition that's being proposed here, a little bit of new lighting, some walkway. Anybody have any comments, questions, concerns? No? All right. We do have a bunch of waivers to address. There's 3 of them. I don't think there's any additional letters, so. Anybody willing to make a motion on this item?
There's no further discussion. I'll make a motion
Okay.
to approve new business number 6, site plan, owner Grace Lutheran Church, finding that it does meet the requirements outlined in site plan NRO section 190-146D, with a total of 7 stipulations. The first 3 being waiver requests. All reading is granted, will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. And with respect to the waiver request and stipulation number 3, I would just note that the waiver, it's for waiver of NRO section 190-275B, and specifically, the waiver being requested is a waiver from the requirement to show a photometric plan with respect to the existing lighting, which was approved as part of the original site plan. And then the remaining stipulations 4 through 7 is written in the staff report.
Can I have a clarification first?
Sure.
Number 3, is it still is granted, will not? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve in front of us with the 7 stipulations as indicated by Mr. Varley. Any second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Weber. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. Thanks a lot. Okay, so moving on. New business number 7, John J. Flatley Company. This has been postponed to our November 15th meeting at this point. Other business, case number 1, review of tentative agenda for proposals of regional impact. Anybody had a chance to review the tentative agenda here at this point? Take a minute if we have not. Any motions?
A couple of these I'm not exactly sure where they are.
Which questions do you have? We can kind of ask staff if we need to.
Some of these I'm just not immediately familiar with the location.
I have a question.
Yep.
When you say the tentative agenda, do you mean the planning board meeting scheduled for August 9th, that sheet?
Yeah, the technical review meeting.
Yeah.
We don't
technical
actually have a
review
tentative
meeting.
agenda.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, the new projects that are listed. Yep.
5 Alice Drive, 20 Kipling Street, 25 Ingalls Street.
Yeah.
Do they have any thoughts on?
I don't have any questions with any of them, so. Make a motion?
None of these would have but the city limits.
Okay. All right, so I want to make a motion, Ed?
I'll make a motion.
Yep.
And it does not impact regional.
Okay, so we have a motion that the proposals don't have any regional impact. You have a second on that? Second by Mr. Peterson. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Other business, case number 2, referral from the Board of Aldermen on proposed petition for street discontinuous portion of Conant Road. So, Roger, are you gonna talk on that? Somebody else?
I realize. Yeah, there's a memo in your staff report. We did attach various, to help you understand where it was located, an aerial photograph and some other issues. And all of the attachments that were given to us. There are, within this area, there's 4 lots that would be impacted. As I understand, 3 of them are in agreement, 1 is not. I believe they are here tonight, or some residents are here to speak to this.
Okay.
It would be good to listen to them. There are a lot of utilities, overhead electric, telephone, cable. There's a fire hydrant in the area that is proposed to be discontinued. 12-inch water main, sewer main, storm drain, and structures. And I'm not quite sure if there's a natural gas line. I wasn't able to determine that, but maybe engineering has that. We still haven't received a recommendation from the city engineer's office. I believe, having spoken to Engineer Dukran later today, that they perhaps weren't ready to make a recommendation. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah, yes. The petitioner, the original petitioner actually went through an automatic representative that came to our attention. We reviewed the area and determined there was a lot of excess right-of-way at the location when Conant Road was realigned during the development of the past. And something like this, we typically have no need for the future as a right-of-way. So we did work with the surveyor/engineer representing the petitioner. But we are not at the point where we can say we can give a full recommendation on it, because we have not gotten back all the feedback from the utility companies. As far as the sewer and drain are concerned, we are okay with that. It's typical. We'll be left with an easement for access for maintenance. But from the rest of the utilities that we are still waiting to hear back from them. We do not foresee a problem from the utility companies, but we definitely want to have them to tell us that before we put our final stamp of approval. You would read there that we did want all of the abutters who were going to benefit from the full discontinuance to be on board, because it just makes sense for us and to have to parcel it out individually. Our hope is that they will all come around at some point in time, because they will have beneficial use of this excess right-of-way. But in order to move forward, I think, should we get concurrence from all utility companies, we will support the discontinuation as presented, as petitioned.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? I'll call the folks up here after. Go ahead, Mr. Pucci.
Yeah, the letter from Roger, maybe I'm reading it wrong. Planning board has not at the time of this memorandum received a recommendation from the city engineer, which is required before the planning board makes a decision. Since we don't have that, isn't this premature? If we don't have that recommendation, we can't make a decision on it. So shouldn't we be just tabling this until we get that recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a hearing, so there are some, Roger, there's some folks here that
Yeah, I think there's some
we
people who would
can
like to
hear
comment.
from them since they're here. We don't have to make a decision tonight, but
Right.
we don't necessarily have to have them
I'm fine.
come back.
But we're not
But
gonna
I-
vote on this
Yeah,
tonight.
well, I think that's up to us, but we have that option, absolutely. But we
do,
can still
because
hear.
it says here it's required before the planning board makes a decision.
Right.
It says required, it doesn't say, that's what I'm asking.
That's what the ordinance says.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
so-
285-24.
Until we get that recommendation,
We
right?
can't make a referral.
Right, we can't make a referral.
But I think it would be useful to hear from the folks that are here anyway, so. So there's, how many of you here, just raise your hand if you're here to talk on this? There's a couple, why don't you go ahead and come on up and just give us your name and address, and go ahead, we'll hear you out while you're here, so. yeah.
Hi, my name's Ed Gilbertson, and I live at 121 Conant Road.
Okay.
And I just wanted to address a little bit on that plan. Basically, the petition is for discontinuance of the unnecessary right-of-way for areas A and B on there. As you said, there are 3 who are for it. Also, Area D is also for it. But right now, a little bit of background is that Conant Road was moved back in 2003, which is why the sewer lines and the drain lines are where they are. It was moved back from that location. And if you look at the location of areas A and areas B on that plat, it shows that there's a clear right-of-way. It could be both Area A and Area B abut Katy Lane. So that completely eliminates the city's liability and maintenance responsibilities for all of the area on Katy Lane. So it clearly gets the right-of-way, a clear right-of-way for the city. And the Area A and B combined are more than half of the total area, the whole area. So it's actually more than 60%. So also, the petitioners, we fully recognize that the city of Nashua has access, needs to have access to this, to the area for a right-of-way for utilities, and especially for like sewers, drains, sidewalks. And petitioners, we fully agree with that. We fully concur with that. We fully appreciate the services that the city provides, and they're being provided to us when you maintain on that. So of course, we're very much for that access to continue. So the city can come through at any time and do that. The other thing is, this has been fully coordinated with the office of our engineer, our surveyor, Mr. Greg Jeffrey. He did coordinate with Mr. Mark Jennings in the city engineer's office, the city surveyor, and he has worked with him several times, at least 4 iterations, to go through and make sure that the plan contains all the information required and shows it in the proper manner, and he's made all the inputs that have been requested of him to show that. So And in compliance with the city engineer's office request, we have gone to all the petitioners. Originally, we were just going to go on our own, but as a result of that request, we went forward, and immediately, Mr. Fournier immediately joined on board. So there was benefit to that immediately. And after having we actually paid for the surveyor of the other 2 remaining properties so that we could get the full tax basis for everybody through our alderman. And we took that back, and that's when the 4th one decided to come on board. So all of that coordination did actually bear some fruit. So, one of the other things is that the maintenance of the property, that's been brought up, and all 4 owners of the properties abutting those areas A, B, C, and D have maintained the properties. We have all performed snow removal, we have all performed watering, we have all performed fertilizing, and we've all performed mowing the grass in those areas as though they were our own. In addition, on areas A and areas B, both have sprinklers installed that cover the areas. And in fact, ours was installed before the final sign-off of the of area B was actually installed before the final sign-off of the project in 2003. I know that because the inspector came up to my wife and said, "Who installed these sprinklers on this city land?" And the answer was, at the time we were renting. I recently got out of the military, so we were renting at the time, and that allowed. And so our landlord had put those in. So she gave him the landlord's name, and that was signed off as part of the final sign-off of the project of the city project when the road was moved back. Let's see. And I have a letter from Mr. Fournier. He was not able to make it tonight, but he would like to say that, and I will provide this to you for the records, but it's, my name is Michael J. Fournier, and I have owned the property at 119 Conant Road since 2003. I have cared for the property in my front yard for the entire time I have been living there as if it was my own. The city land is indistinguishable from my property in the front of my yard because of the effort I have put into it over the years. I have spent my own money to have the land accurately surveyed and will also pay to have the land properly marked. I am in favor of receiving this additional land, which will add to my property value and increase the city's revenue. Best regards, Michael Fournier. And then another bit of information was the issue that the Tupins have brought up about wanting to have the property because they've maintained it. They have not uniquely maintained that area of Area B. That has been started originally by us, and then they picked it up a little bit. But this issue was brought up by our alderman with the city legal. And this is from an email from the alderman to us saying, and I quote from his email, that Attorney Leonard also told me that if Mr. Tupin thinks he can acquire the land by adverse possession, he is mistaken, because state law does not permit the adverse possession of city-owned land. So,
just give it to staff. Thanks. Good.
I think those are the main points we wanted to bring up.
Okay.
Is any questions?
Questions for the butter? No? Steve?
Maybe you know, have you received any feedback regarding the overhead utilities or gas or water?
No, we did not receive any. That was not included on the plan, but we do know where the gas runs through. It runs through through the border between areas C and areas D onto property B.
Yeah.
And all of those, of course, we would allow easements for that.
Because your hired surveyor was, it was requested by the city surveyor to check with all the utilities, and apparently that hasn't been done yet. So our surveyor went ahead and called the utilities, and we're still waiting to hear back from them about whether they're okay with us proceeding with this discontinuation. Because they have rights within a public right-of-way. It's different when it's on private property, even though there is an easement. So we have to make sure that they're on board before,
Whatever
Utilities.
stipulations or whatever you want to put on there is fine with us. We need gas, we need water, we need electricity.
Yeah. Okay. But that hasn't, you haven't gotten feedback from.
We haven't gotten back any
utilities. So
positive
we don't
feedback
have
yet.
that information yet. so,
Right.
We have to address that when we get it. Okay. All right. Anybody else wishing to speak or all set? Okay. Okay, so, I think consistent with what Mr. Rapucci said, I'm not sure we can go all the way through this at this point. Seems like we have a few pieces of information that we need to get from the city at this point, but, and we do need to make some kind of motion and probably just be the table at this point, until we receive additional information, unless anybody else has a different thought, so. Anybody? No? Want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion that we table this to the next meeting, pending the required recommendation from the city engineer.
Okay. So we have a motion by Mr. Rapucci to table. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Harper. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, anybody against? No? Motion passed. Thanks. All right. So at this point, we've tabled it, just because we don't have everything we need from the city yet at this point, so to make any kind of determination. So, yep, thanks, appreciate your attending. All right, let me find my agenda. All right, so we have a planning board, new business, other business, I'm not sure, I don't know if it's number 14, but I think it might be number 3. Planning board reappointment to the Capital Improvement Committee for a 2-year term to expire August 1st, 2020, for Lawrence C. Satella, I don't know how to say that exactly. Satella, and Robert Kenaway. Anybody have any discussion points on that I want to present?
I did speak with both of them,
Yep.
and they both agreed to serve another 2-year term. Both Larry and Robert Canaway have been on the committee for a while, and they have been good members and in good standing.
Okay.
Say, I know Larry Zatella very well. He's an excellent person, excellent character. So.
And I know Bob very well. He's my neighbor and
Okay.
friends with, so I know him well, and he used to be a planning board member too, so he's
Okay.
got good experience.
Any other discussion points on that? Anybody willing to make a motion? I guess it'd be a motion for reappointment, so. Or-
I'll make the motion to reappoint both people.
So we have a motion by Mr. Rapucci to reappoint both the recommended folks, Satella and Canaway. Any second on that?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Varley. Any discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. I don't know if we have any other further discussion points at this point. Does anybody have anything they want to, I mean, we do have, remember the training workshop
What is sidewalk training?
on July 19th. Do you want to go over that?
I'm just curious.
I think
how to build a sidewalk.
we'll discuss the sidewalk ordinance at that meeting.
Yeah, so it's to go over the ordinance and get better information and ask some questions. Who's going to be attending from the city?
There'll be Sarah Marchant and planning staff.
Okay, all right.
The other one, I was talking to Roger about, I did look up, I talked to the building inspector, William, and he said that the city does use construction affidavits for
Right.
any non-permittable, like a retaining wall over 4 feet is a building permit.
Yeah.
It's an engineering thing, and I talked about him, and his recommendation is, if you do have something that's engineered slopes that are gonna affect a neighbor or even that property, he said you should stipulate that it require a construction affidavit by a third party.
Construction control affidavit?
Yes,
Okay.
that was his
Well,
statement.
did he use a third party, or did he use the engineer of?
Third
record?
party, not our city engineers, don't have them. They don't
Well, I
have-
mean, it could be the engineer that
Yes.
did the plan, so
Right,
you're not
at
saying
least
third
that,
party, but.
at least that part.
Do we have, can we get a copy of the one that it sounds like the city has one?
They do.
Yeah. Can
Yeah,
that
we,
be
we can get a copy of that.
just sent around to us? Yeah.
Right, and I think if we have time at that workshop, depending
We can add
how
that.
long the discussion runs, we can bring that one up as well. I mean, I think the board has that ability to do that now.
Right.
I think if you have properties that are difficult properties, they may have impediments like steep slopes,
Right.
and other features that might require, you know, a certification that it was actually constructed per the engineer's design.
Mhm.
That's basically what Ed is talking about. The engineer that designs it isn't there when it's being constructed. They could bring back a third-party engineer or the same engineer to say that it was constructed properly, the affidavit that you spoke of. And that works. That way they assure that it was built according to the engineered design.
One thing that we went even farther to talk about is no applicant that comes in here likes surprises.
Right.
And that would be a surprise, and that could affect his ability just to make any money, because for a engineer to come back on, it's not free, and it's very expensive. And I believe that it's important that at the time they actually come before the administrative end of when they come first time, that in that packet, there's some statement that this will happen. Any engineered, stamped, approved, doesn't require a permit, may need to have a construction. And if they know that going forward,
Right.
then it won't be a surprise.
I mean, that could be a recommendation from staff, I guess, as part of the process.
It can be, or if it's a building-related issue, the building department's part of our tech review process as well.
Okay.
Sometimes you don't know the situation until you get to the building permit, too.
Right.
And
If
what
they
if
know
there's an
it's
issue.
gonna happen, if they have to require it,
Yeah.
then they know about it ahead of time. It's not a surprise. And I think what Bill was saying is everybody's usually willing and not having a problem with that, as long as it's not a surprise.
Yeah. Well, I think we got some time on the 19th. We can talk about that further.
Exactly.
Kind of come up
We
with
can.
some thoughts of what we think is the right approach, so. Okay. Any other discussion items?
There's one thing I just wanted to bring up. It's just an observation of mine, and I don't know how you all feel. When we have a residential development, of substantial size, it's easy to talk about new trips and the impact of traffic infrastructure.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing quite often coming in here, commercial-type developments, whether it's an improved facility, an expansion, or what have you, a new parking lot, and they're saying no new traffic. I just can't put it together, because it's expanding business, it's growing business, and it's gonna generate traffic. But that's the representation we get from the applicant, and that's what we have to work with.
Okay. Are you recommending any changes to what we're doing?
I don't know, I'm just telling you.
Workshop.
There's a burden on existing infrastructure, obviously, and
Yeah.
and I don't know how the city's gonna deal with it.
Yeah, there is a threshold sheet that they prepare, and do they not discuss it with the traffic engineer in your division?
Not all the time, actually. There was one that you know, we shouldn't probably be talking about it, but talked about a waiver of that sheet.
Yeah,
We saw that tonight.
okay.
Could that be part of, so that we're, so that in case you're not here, we would be educated better by our workshop?
I think I talked to Sarah Marchand, I think her objective is to come up with a long-term plan for how we approach sidewalks and how we approach, that's gonna be a pretty involved topic. It's not, my understanding was, it's not a meeting to tell us how to do this. It's a meeting for us to come to a consensus and a plan with them in order to do it that way. I don't see a lot of time in that meeting for anything beyond that, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's probably a couple of hours at the least, so maybe
Right.
we ought to look at other trainings at other.
Yeah, and we can have, we can have another workshop later on
Yeah,
that, too.
that's great.
If we don't have enough time, Ed.
And
or-
Jerry, at that sidewalk workshop, I'm sure Jerry's gonna take like half the time.
You guys know what I think, I put it all on paper, so it's not gonna happen.
All right. Okay, anything else? If not, I think a motion to adjourn. Anybody?
Mr. Chairman, can I just introduce myself?
Sure, go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to put a name to the, put a face to the, put a face to the name. I'm Pete Cahalmi, the Deputy City Engineer. Taking G. Walker's former position.
We could have used you 2 hours ago.
I was there and I was ready to speak, but I never
Didn't get
got the
asked.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to meet you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you
you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, anybody else? No? Make a motion for adjournment?
Make a motion to adjourn?
We have a motion by Mr. Barley. All's in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 8:51.
Good job. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Hey, we got another thing down here on the bottom, workshop. Look at that. There's a column here, a thing for workshop.